The challenge. The prestigious Chicago Culinary Institute hummed with anticipation as food enthusiasts filled the gleaming teaching kitchen. Emma Hayes stood quietly in the back, her simple white t-shirt and jeans making her nearly invisible among the sea of professional chef coats and pristine uniforms. At 38, Emma had perfected the art of blending into the background. Her honey blonde hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, her face free of makeup that might draw attention. She was here for one reason only, to support her niece Jen's culinary dreams. "You sure you don't want me to mention who you are?" Jen whispered, excitement dancing in her 22-year-old eyes. "Absolutely not," Emma replied firmly. "This is your moment, not mine." The room fell silent as Chef Martha Coleman entered. At 65, she was culinary royalty, silver hair perfectly styled, designer glasses gleaming, her chef's coat emblazoned with awards and accolades. She commanded respect through fear, her reputation for destroying amateur cooks' confidence legendary in culinary circles. "Welcome," Martha announced, her voice cutting through the space like a blade. "Today we separate those with genuine potential from those merely playing at being chefs." Her sharp eyes scanned the room, evaluating each face. When they landed on Emma's casual attire, a flicker of disdain crossed her features. "I see we have some enthusiastic home cooks joining us," Martha remarked, her tone dripping with condescension. Emma kept her expression neutral, though her stomach tightened. She knew that look, the immediate judgment, the professional dismissal she'd encountered countless times before. As Martha began demonstrating mother sauces, Emma couldn't help but whisper guidance to Jen. "If she lowered the heat slightly, the sauce wouldn't break so easily," she murmured. The whisper wasn't quiet enough. Martha's head snapped up, her piercing gaze locking onto Emma like a heat-seeking missile. "Do we have an expert in our midst?" The crowd turned. Emma felt the weight of dozens of eyes upon her. She'd been spotted. The trap. Martha's heels clicked sharply against the polished floor as she approached Emma, each step echoing through the suddenly silent room like a countdown to execution. "You have something to add to my demonstration?" Martha asked, one perfectly manicured eyebrow arched in challenge. Emma shook her head slightly. "No, I was just helping my niece understand the technique." Martha's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Oh. And what expertise do you bring to this assistance?" Before Emma could answer, Martha's gaze dropped to Emma's hands. Despite 10 years away from professional kitchens, they still bore the telltale signs, slight burns, calluses, the nearly imperceptible nick scars that were badges of a life spent with knives and heat. "Those are cook's hands," Martha observed, her voice sharper now. "Not just a hobbyist, are you?" Emma kept her expression neutral. "I've worked in kitchens before." A ripple of murmurs spread through the audience. Martha's smile tightened as she surveyed Emma's simple clothing, such a stark contrast to her own impeccable appearance. "Well then," Martha's voice carried across the room, "perhaps you'd like to come up here and demonstrate for us?" Emma felt Jen tense beside her. "Aunt Emma, you don't have to." "I'm really just here to observe," Emma replied calmly, though her heart hammered against her ribs. Martha's laugh was brittle. "Isn't that convenient? Happy to critique but unwilling to perform." The challenge hung in the air like smoke. Some students shifted uncomfortably while others watched with barely concealed delight at witnessing potential drama. Emma recognized the trap. She'd seen Martha do this before on her cooking shows, publicly humiliating amateur chefs who dared question her methods. "I insist," Martha said, no longer smiling. She gestured to an empty workstation. "Show us what you know." A young assistant, catching Martha's signal, hurried forward with a spare apron. Emma remained seated, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on her. 10 years she'd been away from this world, 10 years building a quiet life where nobody scrutinized her every move, where food was about joy rather than judgment. "Come now," Martha said, her voice honey-sweet with mock encouragement. "Surely someone confident enough to correct my technique isn't afraid of a little demonstration." Emma felt the trap closing around her. Refuse, and she'd be labeled a coward. Accept, and she risked everything she'd built since leaving the spotlight. It's just a simple bechamel, Martha added, the challenge unmistakable. Surely a kitchen veteran can manage that. The assistant placed the apron on the table in front of Emma. The white fabric seemed to glow under the bright lights of the teaching kitchen. Emma looked at her niece's worried face, then at the sea of expectant expressions surrounding them. Martha stood waiting, confident in her ability to crush another amateur's spirit. "That's fine," Emma finally said, her voice quiet but steady. "I'd be happy to demonstrate." The revelation. As Emma stood, whispers rippled through the audience. Did she just volunteer to go against Chef Coleman? Does she know who she's dealing with? This is going to be brutal. Emma tied the apron around her waist, muscle memory taking over as she formed the perfect bow at her back. She followed Martha to the front, aware of every eye tracking her movement. "Your name?" Martha asked, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Emma Hayes." Martha gestured expansively to the workstation. "Well, Emma Hayes, show us how you would approach a proper bechamel." Emma surveyed the ingredients laid out before her: butter, flour, milk, seasonings. Her fingers moved with practiced precision, checking the freshness of each component. She adjusted the burner with the subtle touch of someone who understood heat intimately. The room watched in fascination as Emma's entire demeanor transformed. Gone was the quiet woman trying to blend into the background. In her place stood someone completely at home in a professional kitchen. She started the roux, her movements fluid and confident. The butter melted at exactly the right temperature, the flour whisked in with perfect timing. As she worked, her technique revealed years of professional training, the way she held her whisk, the angle of her wrist, the steady rhythm that spoke of muscle memory built through countless hours of practice. Martha's expression shifted from smug anticipation to growing concern. This wasn't the amateur she'd expected to embarrass. Emma tempered the milk with the precision of a surgeon, incorporating it in stages to create a sauce of impossible smoothness. She seasoned by instinct, tasting with the kind of refined palate that comes only from years of professional cooking. The kitchen fell completely silent except for the gentle bubbling of Emma's perfect bechamel. Even Martha's assistants had stopped moving, transfixed by the display of skill unfolding before them. "The key," Emma said quietly as she worked, her voice carrying clearly through the hushed room, "is understanding that cooking isn't about following rules, it's about understanding why the rules exist in the first place." She finished the sauce and held up the spoon. The bechamel coated it in a perfect, glossy film that held its shape without being too thick. It was textbook perfection, but achieved with an ease that made it look effortless. Martha stared at the sauce, then at Emma, her mind racing. Something about this woman's technique, her confidence, her natural authority in the kitchen was triggering a memory. "Have we met before?" Martha asked suddenly, her voice uncertain for the first time that day. Emma met her gaze steadily. "Yes, we have. Though it was a long time ago, when I was Emma Sinclair." The name hit the room like a thunderbolt. Gasps echoed from every corner as recognition dawned on faces throughout the audience. The recognition. Emma Sinclair. Martha's voice cracked slightly. The Emma Sinclair who won the James Beard Award at 28. Who had that revolutionary restaurant in New York. The room erupted in whispers and gasps. Students pulled out phones, frantically Googling. Culinary instructors who had been watching from the sidelines pushed forward for a better look. Emma nodded simply. "That was me. Before I decided I needed a different life." Martha's face went through a spectrum of emotions: shock, embarrassment, and dawning horror at what she'd just done. She had publicly challenged one of the most respected chefs of the previous decade, someone whose cookbook was still considered essential reading in culinary schools worldwide. "But you disappeared," Martha said, her voice barely above a whisper. "After the accident, you just vanished from the culinary world." Emma's expression softened slightly. "I needed time to heal. And I discovered there was more to life than Michelin stars and food critics." The room was electric with tension. Every person present understood they were witnessing culinary history, the return, however brief, of a legend who had walked away at the height of her career. "Why didn't you say anything?" Martha asked, genuine confusion replacing her earlier arrogance. "Because," Emma said, untying her apron, "I didn't come here as Emma Sinclair. I came here as Jen's aunt, someone who just wanted to support her niece's dreams without making it about myself." Jen stood frozen in the audience, tears streaming down her face. Her aunt, the woman who had quietly encouraged her culinary ambitions, who had somehow gotten her tickets to this impossible-to-access masterclass, was one of the most celebrated chefs in modern history. Martha looked at the perfect bechamel still gleaming in the pan, then back at Emma. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room. She had tried to humiliate someone she thought was beneath her station, only to discover she'd challenged a master. "I owe you an apology," Martha said, her voice carrying clearly through the silent room. "I made assumptions based on appearances, and that was unprofessional and wrong." Emma nodded graciously. "We've all done it. The kitchen has a way of revealing who we really are, doesn't it?" She walked back toward her seat, but Martha's voice stopped her. Would you consider showing them one more technique? Not as a challenge, but as a gift to these students." Emma paused, looking out at the sea of eager faces. These weren't just culinary students anymore, they were aspiring chefs who would probably never again have the chance to learn from someone of her caliber. She looked at Jen, who nodded encouragingly through her tears. "All right," Emma said, returning to the workstation. "But just one more. The gift." Emma returned to the workstation, but this time the atmosphere was completely different. Instead of hostile challenge, there was reverent attention. She surveyed the available ingredients and smiled. "I'm going to show you something that isn't in any cookbook," she said, her voice warm and encouraging. "It's about understanding ingredients, not just following recipes." She selected seemingly random items, eggs, cream, a few herbs, some leftover vegetables. As she worked, she talked, not with the condescending tone Martha had used, but with the patience of someone who genuinely loved teaching. "Cooking isn't about perfect technique," Emma explained as she transformed simple ingredients into something extraordinary. "It's about understanding what food wants to become. Every ingredient has a story to tell, and our job is to listen." She created a soufflé that was both technically perfect and deeply personal, incorporating flavors that shouldn't have worked together but somehow created magic. The room watched in rapt silence as she worked, explaining not just the how but the why behind each decision. "The most important ingredient," she said as she placed the soufflé in the oven, "isn't in any pantry. It's respect, for the ingredients, for the process, and for the people you're cooking for." While they waited for the soufflé to bake, Emma answered questions with genuine enthusiasm. She shared stories of her career, her failures as well as her successes, and most importantly, why she had chosen to step away from the spotlight. "Success isn't just about recognition," she said. "It's about finding what truly feeds your soul. For me, that wasn't restaurants or fame, it was family, quiet moments, and cooking for people I love." When the soufflé emerged from the oven, golden and perfect, the room fell silent. Emma served small portions to everyone present, including Martha, who took her first bite with tears in her eyes. "This is why you were legendary," Martha said quietly. "Not just the technique, but the heart you put into every dish." As the masterclass came to an end, students surrounded Emma, asking for advice, for autographs, for the chance to simply shake her hand. She handled each interaction with grace, treating every student as if they were already the chef they dreamed of becoming. Finally, as the crowd began to disperse, Emma found herself alone with Jen and Martha. "I'm sorry," Martha said again. "I let my ego get in the way of what this should have been about, teaching." Emma smiled. "We all have bad days. What matters is what we learn from them." She turned to Jen, who was still processing everything that had happened. "Ready to go home?" Emma asked. Jen nodded, but as they walked toward the exit, she stopped. "Aunt Emma? Will you teach me? Really teach me?" Emma's smile lit up her entire face. "I thought you'd never ask." As they left the Culinary Institute together, Emma felt a weight she hadn't realized she was carrying finally lift from her shoulders. She had spent 10 years proving that she could live without the culinary world, but today she had discovered something even more valuable, that the culinary world could benefit from her presence, not as a star, but as a teacher, a mentor, and most importantly, as herself. The woman who had walked into the masterclass wanting only to support her niece had rediscovered her own purpose. And sometimes, that's the most delicious discovery of all. The end.